Being in a relationship with a narcissist can often lead to situations where you need their help and support with something that maybe they've caused, or you need their help and support on something that you can't do on your own. And you find that you just can't depend on them. And these situations leave you feeling like you're dragging somebody along, constantly begging and pleading for them to do the things that you really need for them to do, constantly trying to convince them why they should be helping you or supporting you with this thing that you really need them for, and ultimately finding that you just can't depend on them for certain things. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video, why you can't depend on narcissists. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Now, admittedly, I think it would be a big stretch to say that you can't depend on narcissists for anything. That's a really broad, sweeping statement, and it simply isn't true. A lot of narcissists are dependable in certain ways for certain things. A lot of them will always show up to work on time, for example. You can count on some of them to always pay their bills on time, or some of them, if you ever break down on the side of the road, they'll be there to pick you up. So it's not really fair to say that you can't depend on them for anything, but I think it's important to really explore this topic to understand why in some cases you can't depend on them, and in those ways it is unique to their narcissism why you can't depend on them, and also why it is that some of them are dependable in certain ways in certain situations. For narcissists who are dependable in certain situations, it's never because it serves you or it helps you. Narcissists can be dependable in situations that serve them if it makes them feel good about themselves, if what they're doing feeds into the image that they want to see of themselves, which, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. When you're helping someone out because it makes you feel good about yourself, there's no victim there, right? But when that's the only reason you're doing it, there are great limits to what you can depend on that person for. If the thing you need them for doesn't serve the image they want to see of themselves in their head, then they're not going to help you out. Another reason that a narcissist might be dependable is if they are doing things to create your dependence on them. If they are, for instance, financially supporting you because they want you dependent on them so that they can control you and keep you around, limit your options so that they can keep control of you, and so that they have something to hold over your head later if you are ever trying to hold them accountable for anything, or you're ever asking them for anything. They can say, well, what about all of this that I did for you? Again, these are ways they are dependable that serve them. They're not doing any of these things for your benefit or for the benefit of the relationship. They do these things for themselves. So let's talk about situations where narcissists are not dependable, where they fall through on you, and these things that seem so reasonable that you really need them for, it's like you're asking the world of them, and they're so unpredictably, intermittently supportive, or one minute you think they finally got it and then it all falls through. Why is this? What is it about narcissism that makes someone so unreliable in situations that they don't feel like helping you? First of all, narcissists live in the present moment, which means that everything comes down to how they feel right now, and more specifically, how they feel about themselves right now, the mood they're in, how their ego is doing right now. If they are feeling any kind of shame or any threats to their ego, how do they feel right now? That is all that ever really matters to them. They really aren't planning long-term things in their mind. They have a sort of magical world view, and they aren't really grounded in the reality of tomorrow is going to happen. And a lot of the things that happen tomorrow are going to be consequences of the things you do today. They just don't view the world that way. It's all moment to moment. How do I feel right now? And what do I need to do right now? Or what do I need you to do right now to make me feel good about myself? Because they have such toxic shame. They are living in such a panic mode so often that they just don't have the emotional capacity to consider anything else. It's like they're in crisis mode 24/7. And when you're in crisis mode, you aren't thinking about tomorrow. And that's why narcissists live in the present moment. And that's why you really can't depend on them for important things. And when I say important things in this context, I mean things like maybe you would like to save for retirement with them, but they just aren't getting on board with it, or they're fighting you on it. Or maybe you're just trying to get out of debt with them and they fight you on creating a budget or creating a plan. You just can't depend on them to stick to anything that you try to come up with them. Or maybe you're just trying to get them to stop putting you in so much debt, to stop spending things on things that you don't need. And they just won't do it because today's the only thing that really matters. And if they want to buy some frivolous thing that you can't afford with a credit card that is almost maxed out, but it's going to make them feel good about themselves right now, in this moment, they're going to do it. And you could figure out how to fix that mess later. They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're thinking about how to make themselves feel better about themselves right now. When it comes to things that take consistent effort that don't provide immediate rewards. For example, if you were training for a marathon, right, you might need to put a lot of consistent effort over a long period of time before you actually see results, before you're actually able to run a marathon. They're not going to do that unless the effort itself is serving their ego. So in this example of training for a marathon, if going to the gym or wherever, going outside and training for the marathon in and of itself feeds their ego, then they might be likely to do that. But if it's just the running of the marathon that's going to make them feel good about themselves, they're not going to go through this consistent effort every day for a future goal. And that's why you will be very hard pressed to convince them to help you with anything, support you with anything that takes long-term consistent effort before there are any rewards seen. Another reason that you can't depend on narcissists is that they only think about themselves. And this is no secret. I mean, this is practically the definition of narcissism. Everything they do is for themselves. They are the center of the universe. Everything and anything exists for them, because of them. Any effort they put into anything is for them. And any effort that you put into anything should be for them. So why would they want to put effort into something that you want them to do if they don't see the benefit? Even if you see the benefit, even if it would benefit them, if they don't see the benefit, if they don't see the point, they're not going to do it. And if neglecting the thing that you need them to do directly harms you in a very material way, it doesn't matter to them. That's not going to motivate them to change their behavior. If neglecting to do what you need them to do directly harms them immediately in a material way, they might give it a second thought, but only if it affects them in a way that they can immediately see and feel. And as an example, let's say you had a life-threatening allergy to shellfish. I actually saw somebody post this on Facebook the other day. They had a life-threatening allergy to shellfish, but their boyfriend would still order it and eat it around them and go bring it with them to parties and expect this person that had this life-threatening allergy to be present, and putting no effort into protecting their partner from this life-threatening allergy. Now, I don't know if that person is a narcissist or not. I don't know them at all, but that would be a very narcissistic thing to do, because if you have a life-threatening allergy, that's your problem. Why should I have to make sacrifices for myself? Why should I have to alter my behavior for something that's your problem? And this leads into another related reason that you can't depend on narcissists, and that's that they're entitled to all of your efforts and everything you have to give. They feel completely entitled to all the resources, and they feel no obligation to give anything back in return. So when you are depending on them for something that you both need, like maybe you really, really need them to go to therapy with you, and they either go, but they don't get anything out of it, or they don't put any effort in when they go, or they won't go at all. Well, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you're having extremely serious problems with them, in their eyes, that's your job to fix. You're supposed to deal with all that. You're supposed to solve all their problems because you're the one causing all the problems. Remember, nothing is ever their fault. And in relation to that, nothing is ever really their responsibility. So you need to solve the relationship problems, even if they're the one causing them. The things that they do to directly sabotage your attempts to make the relationship tolerable are just more of what you're responsible to deal with. They should be able to act however they want and be themselves, and you're the one who's responsible to pick up the pieces, to hold it together, to fix everything, to patch the holes that they keep punching in the bottom of this boat. So depend on them? You can't depend on them because you're the one who's supposed to be fixing everything. You're the one responsible for everything, and you're the one causing all the problems anyway, in their mind. So why should they have to put any effort into all the problems you're causing? Even if in reality, like the example I gave a minute ago about if they're putting you into debt and they just keep buying things you don't need with a credit card that's almost maxed out and you can't get them to stop doing this, somehow, and anyone who's been in this position will know, somehow that is also your fault. As big of a stretch as it might be, that's what they will convince themselves in your mind. So even something like that, that's clearly out of your control and clearly something you can't do anything about, they're still going to view it as something that's your fault and your responsibility to fix. Another reason that you can't depend on narcissists is that they don't trust you. Narcissists don't trust anyone. And why would this make them unreliable? Well, they're constantly guarding their own self-interests. They aren't going to sacrifice anything or take any risks on you when they don't trust you. They aren't going to do anything that you could possibly hold over their head later. So when they do things for you, this is why they will only do things that they can have complete control over, that they can control the narrative with, or that they know that they can use against you later if they need to, or if they feel like they need to. So with the example of the shellfish allergy, to a narcissist, they might think, if I make sacrifices and I put real effort into avoiding shellfish for the sake of this other person, well, what if they're just lying to me about it? What if they're secretly laughing at me behind my back and they're just making a big deal out of nothing to try to control me and try to stop me from eating a food that maybe I want to eat, and they're just trying to control my life and tell me what to do? Because, they're projecting, because narcissists do things like that, just make things up to control other people. And so they'll project this mistrust, and they're not going to fall for that. Oh, you have a shellfish allergy? Well, maybe you do, but I'm not going to risk the possibility that you're just lying and making everything up. Because to a narcissist, if you were just making it up, exaggerating, trying to control them with this so-called shellfish allergy, and they fell for it, and they actually put real effort into trying to protect you from this allergy, that would be so much worse for them, so much harder for them to deal with than if they just did whatever they wanted, ate all the shellfish they wanted, and then you ended up in the hospital. Well, that's too bad, but that's easier for them to deal with than if you actually made a fool out of them, which in their mind is a far more likely scenario because they don't trust you. Like, they're not going to put all this effort into therapy and actually try to be better and actually be vulnerable and actually put some work into thinking about why they feel the way they do, why they do the things they do, when you're just going to leave them anyway, or when you just took them to therapy to try to make them look bad. They're not going to fall for that. And that's what they, by default, are going to think you're doing. Just like they're not going to tell you the truth about what's really happening when you're probably just going to lie to them. Why should they have to tell you the truth when there's no way for them to know if you're telling them the truth? Or why should they be faithful to you when you're probably cheating on them anyway? So why should they take the risk of being faithful when you're just going to make a fool out of them? Why should they help you save for retirement when you're probably just going to pull all the money out at some point and run away with it? And then what? Or why should they cooperate with you when you're trying to create a budget when you're probably just going to buy what you want anyway? You're not going to follow through with it. Why should they stop buying things you don't need on a credit card that's almost maxed out when you're probably going to do that anyway? You're going to do that too. So why should they sacrifice? Why should they take risks? Why should they be vulnerable? Why should they put in effort into things that don't immediately reward them and make them feel better about themselves when in their mind, you're not going to follow through? You're going to betray them eventually. You're not going to be there in the long run. And because they have this mentality, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and they're often right. People often do get tired of being treated like they're some treacherous enemy out to get them when all they're trying to do is find somebody who will cooperate with them in trying to build a tolerable life. And so when you get tired of this, when you get tired of being treated this way by someone who won't support you in any way you need them to, you're very likely to give up on them and leave, which only reinforces these paranoias that they have, that there's no point in putting any effort into anything, really being there for anyone, really giving up any of this control or being vulnerable when everybody's just going to betray them anyway. And the point of understanding this, I think, is to help guide you through these situations where it's so frustrating and confusing to try to understand why someone that you care about, someone that you think cares about you, or someone who claims to care about you, won't follow through on simple basic things that you should be able to depend on them for, is so combative and so distrustful of you when you have good intentions and you're just trying to make life better for the both of you. It's so hard to understand and accept this. And so, when somebody that you're with is so difficult and is continually doing things to sabotage a quality life, it's easy to think they just must not understand. I need to explain this to them again, or I need to beg them harder to cooperate, or I need to give them more, especially when you give them ultimatums or you confront them and they start telling you what you want to hear and they start acknowledging, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again, I promise, when they want something, right? And when they have these moments of promising you that they're going to change, acknowledging what they've done wrong, it's really easy to believe them because what they're saying finally makes sense. So if you believe that this is a reasonable adult, of course, you're going to think that they finally understand what you need from them. They finally understand these completely reasonable demands that you're making. And so it's just so mind-boggling to be dealing with a grown adult who won't follow through on the most basic things that you need from them. And you can get caught in a cycle for years and years, explaining, begging, giving them second chances, trying to understand why they won't do things that will benefit them. So I think that when you understand that even if it's something that will benefit them, they have a different definition of what benefits them from your definition. What benefits them, like I said, is what makes them feel good right now. What makes them feel good about themselves right now. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if you're envisioning having a stable retirement 20, 30, 40 years down the road. They don't care about that. It's not that they don't understand or the implications of burying yourself in debt. They're thinking about today. They're not thinking about what it's going to do to your future. And it's not that they don't understand. It's not that they need you to explain it again. It's that they don't care. They don't care about your future. Most of them don't believe that you're going to be part of their future. Most of them feel like you're probably going to betray them any day now, and that's why they treat you like you're going to be gone tomorrow and everything's going to be gone tomorrow. They're not investing anything into this relationship because every relationship to them is temporary. And so this is why these things that seem so normal and so reasonable to you, they are so resistant to. And I think understanding this, as horrifying and heartbreaking as it is, can help you let go of continually trying to depend on someone who is completely unreliable, someone you can't depend on, someone who will never be on the same page. You cannot depend on a narcissist for anything that they don't have complete control over, or for things that aren't completely their idea. There is no reciprocity in a narcissistic relationship because there is no mutual trust. A narcissist will always only be looking out for number one, and that's themselves. And they'll only be looking out for number one today, in this moment, how they feel right now. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.